Sarah Whitman was the picture of hope. Derek Collins was the master of illusion. Their whirlwind romance captivated everyone, two seemingly perfect souls starting a life together. But within weeks of saying "I do," Sarah was dead, and Derek was at the center of a chilling mystery. Beneath his charm and wedding vows lay secrets darker than anyone could have imagined. What drove a newlywed husband to murder the woman he just married? And how far would he go to hide the truth? This is the twisted true crime story of love lies and lethal betrayal. The wedding of Sarah Whitman and Derek Collins was the kind of event that made people believe in fairy tales. It was held on a sunny Saturday afternoon in the heart of Maplewood, a quiet town known more for its friendly neighbors than for anything newsworthy. The church, a small white chapel at the edge of town, was decorated with soft pastel flowers and flickering candles. Everything seemed picture-perfect. Sarah wore a simple lace gown that hugged her figure, and Derek looked sharp in a tailored navy suit. Friends and family gathered with smiles, unaware that beneath the surface of this romantic celebration, something far more sinister was quietly forming. Sarah had always been the kind of person people gravitated toward. She was warm, generous, and full of optimism. As a second-grade teacher at the local elementary school, she had a reputation for being patient and kind-hearted, someone who saw the best in everyone. She met Derek through a mutual friend during a charity fundraiser. He was charming, smooth-talking, and successful, a real estate agent who knew how to win people over. Sarah fell for him quickly. He seemed attentive, thoughtful, and ready to build a future together. He sent flowers to her classroom. He took her out on carefully planned dates. Her friends warned her that he might be too perfect, but Sarah brushed off their concerns. Their engagement was short. Derek proposed after just 7 months during a weekend getaway at a vineyard. Sarah said yes without hesitation. From the outside, their whirlwind romance looked magical. Their social media accounts filled with happy photos, vacation snapshots, date nights, wedding preparations. Sarah's followers gushed over how lucky she was. Few noticed how often Derek was absent from group events or how often he checked his phone when they were together. Sarah didn't ask questions. She trusted him. The honeymoon was a tropical escape to Belize. Sarah posted photos of sunsets, snorkeling trips, and candlelit dinners. Derek seemed equally smitten in the pictures, smiling next to Sarah as they toasted to their new life. But those who looked closely might have sensed something off. Derek never commented on Sarah's posts. He rarely tagged her in his own. When they returned home, neighbors saw less of Sarah. She told a friend she was adjusting to married life and feeling a bit overwhelmed, but she smiled and said it was all normal. Behind closed doors, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Derek often worked late, sometimes coming home past midnight. He brushed it off as client meetings or traffic. Sarah believed him. After all, she had no reason not to. They had just gotten married. She was still writing thank you notes for wedding gifts when everything unraveled. Barely 11 weeks into their marriage, Sarah was found dead in the kitchen of their home. Her murder sent shockwaves through Maplewood. How could something so terrible happen to someone so kind? At first, everyone rallied behind Derek, the heartbroken husband. But soon, small cracks in his story began to show. The fairy tale had ended, but the nightmare was only beginning. The morning of Sarah's murder began like any other. The sun was just rising over Maplewood, casting a warm glow on the quiet streets. Neighbors reported nothing unusual, just another peaceful start to the day. But by mid-morning, sirens broke. That calm. Police cars surrounded the Collins home, tape went up around the yard, and a crowd of shocked onlookers began to gather. Sarah Whitman Collins had been found dead in her own kitchen, and the story Derek told immediately raised questions. Derek was the one who called 911. His voice was panicked, almost theatrical, as he told dispatchers he'd just returned from a morning showing to find the front door open and his wife lying in a pool of blood. Officers arrived within minutes. Inside the house, the scene was chaotic. Drawers in the living room and kitchen had been pulled out, cabinets were left hanging open, and several items had been thrown to the ground. At first glance, it looked like a robbery gone wrong, but trained eyes noticed discrepancies. Nothing valuable had been taken. Sarah's purse was still on the counter with her wallet inside. Her wedding ring, gold bracelet, and an expensive smartwatch were all untouched. In the living room, an open laptop sat on the couch. It hadn't been stolen. A small safe in the closet remained locked and unopened. For a burglary, the criminal had passed over every obvious prize. It didn't add up. There was no sign of forced entry. The front door lock hadn't been tampered with, and the back door was bolted from the inside. Windows were shut tight. Investigators began to wonder if the intruder hadn't broken in at all, but had been let in, or had already been inside. The more they examined the scene, the more the idea of a random burglary began to unravel. The mess looked too staged, too deliberate, like someone trying to make it look like something it wasn't. Sarah had been stabbed multiple times, but there were no defensive wounds on her hands or arms. That detail was crucial. It suggested she hadn't seen it coming. She likely knew her attacker and hadn't felt threatened, at least not at first. The brutality of the murder didn't match the scene of a typical home invasion. It was personal, angry, controlled. The kitchen where her body was found was clean aside from the staged mess. No blood trail, no overturned furniture. It looked as though the killer had known exactly where she'd be and how to get away quickly. Derek told detectives he had been out showing a house to a new client, someone he claimed he'd just met online. But when investigators asked for the client's name and contact information, Derek said he couldn't remember. He claimed he had deleted the messages after the meeting was cancelled last minute. That explanation didn't sit right with anyone. Security footage from nearby homes was collected. Most houses in the neighborhood didn't have cameras, but one neighbor did, facing the street. The footage captured Derek's car leaving the driveway much earlier than he claimed and returning closer to the time of the 911 call. It didn't prove anything yet, but it suggested a gap in his story, a timeline that didn't match. Detectives noted it all down. They didn't say much to Derek that day, but suspicion had already begun to take root. Something about the way the story was unfolding didn't fit. As the investigation into Sarah's murder deepened, detectives turned their attention to Derek Collins's life, beyond the polished image he presented. What they discovered was a tangled web of deception, carefully hidden beneath the surface of his charming public persona. Derek, the grieving husband who had cried at his wife's funeral and posted heartfelt tributes online, was not the man he appeared to be. It began with a routine check of Derek's phone records. Investigators pulled call logs, text messages, and app data, searching for any clues that might shed light on Sarah's final days. What they found was far more than expected. Derek had been in frequent contact with several different women, none of whom were Sarah. The messages ranged from flirtatious to explicit, with conversations that had clearly been ongoing well before the wedding. He had juggled at least 3 active affairs, each woman unaware of the others, and certainly unaware that he was newly married. Some of the messages were dated just days before Sarah was killed. In one string of texts, Derek told a woman he was stuck in a situation and that he wanted out. Another message mentioned how things would be easier once it was all behind him. The tone was vague but unsettling. Investigators couldn't ignore the implication that Derek viewed his marriage as an obstacle, not a commitment. The situation became more troubling when detectives uncovered a life insurance policy Derek had taken out on Sarah shortly before their wedding. The policy was for $500,000 and listed Derek as the sole beneficiary. Sarah's signature was on the paperwork, but experts later confirmed it had likely been forged. She had never mentioned the policy to her friends or family, and it was not in the documents she kept at home. It was a chilling discovery, one that shifted the focus of the investigation entirely. Detectives dug into Derek's financial records and found he had been drowning in quiet debt. Credit card balances, back taxes, and personal loans had all been piling up behind the scenes. His real estate business wasn't doing as well as he had claimed. The luxury lifestyle he flaunted on social media was held together by borrowed money and illusion. The life insurance payout would have cleared his debts and left him with a fresh start. When confronted with this evidence, Derek offered flimsy explanations. He claimed the messages were innocent and the policy was Sarah's idea. But the lies began to pile up. He couldn't explain why he had deleted his messages with the women or why there was no documentation of Sarah agreeing to the policy. His calm began to crack. Detectives noticed he shifted stories often, sometimes contradicting himself in the same conversation. The pressure was mounting. Derek's carefully crafted life was coming undone, thread by thread. What once looked like a loving marriage now appeared to be part of a calculated plan, a plan to marry, cash in and walk away. But with each new piece of evidence, it became harder for Derek to walk anywhere. The walls were closing in, and soon there would be nowhere left to hide. The investigation took a sharp turn when one of Derek's mistresses came forward. Her name was Amanda Cross, a dental hygienist from a nearby town. She had met Derek on a dating app months before his wedding and claimed she had no idea he was engaged, let alone married. Amanda only found out about Sarah's death when she saw a news report on television and recognized Derek in the coverage. Shocked and disturbed, she contacted the police and provided a detailed account of their relationship. What she revealed added yet another disturbing layer to the case. Amanda said that Derek had spoken often about being unhappy. He described his marriage as a mistake and repeatedly insisted he had been pressured into it. He told her he was working on getting out, using vague language that Amanda had interpreted as meaning divorce. But in hindsight, those conversations felt different, almost like he had been preparing her for something more permanent. Amanda also provided screenshots of messages Derek had sent in the weeks leading up to the murder. In one, he mentioned how things would be different soon. In another, he hinted at finally being free. These weren't just emotional statements. They were red flags. The police obtained a warrant to search Derek's laptop and digital backups. What they found was damning. His search history revealed disturbing queries, including how to stage a robbery, how long does it take to bleed to death, how to erase phone records, and can police recover deleted texts. These weren't the kinds of searches someone made out of curiosity. They were the work of someone planning a crime and trying to cover it up. In addition to the searches, detectives discovered drafts of messages Derek had written but never sent, many of which sounded like attempts to control the narrative in case he was questioned. Some were worded as if he was preparing to defend himself. Others appeared to be possible texts he might send to friends or family after Sarah's death, phrased to make him appear innocent or caught off guard. It was calculated, cold, and completely at odds with the grieving husband act he had maintained. Perhaps the most crucial piece of physical evidence came from the murder weapon itself. The knife used to kill Sarah had been cleaned, but not well. Enough? Forensics pulled a partial fingerprint from the handle, Derek's. He tried to explain it by saying he had used the knife the day before while cooking dinner, but investigators noted the print was recent and not consistent with normal kitchen use. There was no oil or food residue beneath the fingerprint. It was clean, as if placed directly on a freshly washed blade. Experts believed it had been left during or after the murder. The puzzle was beginning to form a clear picture. Derek's affairs, financial desperation, life insurance policy, and staged crime scene all pointed in one direction. And now, with damning digital evidence and forensic proof, the case against him was nearly airtight. What once looked like a tragic home invasion had unraveled into something much darker. A premeditated plan carried out with precision and a disturbing lack of remorse. When Derek Collins was arrested, the town of Maplewood was stunned. For months he had portrayed the grieving husband, attending community vigils, speaking softly to reporters, and even organizing a memorial scholarship in Sarah's name. He stood beside her family with tears in his eyes, hiding behind a mask of sorrow. But as the trial began, the mask was torn away, revealing the cold, calculating man beneath. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. They began with the timeline, showing how Derek's movements on the day of the murder didn't match his original statements. Surveillance footage and phone location data placed him near the house far earlier than he had claimed. Then came the staged robbery, the untouched valuables, the locked doors, and the carefully scattered items. The inconsistencies piled up quickly, but what made the jury sit up were the digital footprints. The internet searches, deleted messages, and cloud-stored drafts painted a clear picture of someone who had not only planned the murder, but tried to manipulate the aftermath. The testimony of Amanda Cross added emotional weight. She described Derek's growing desperation, his repeated statements about wanting to escape his marriage, and his vague but ominous references to being free. Her messages with him, calm on the surface, chilling in context, gave the jury a glimpse into Derek's state of mind. Then came the forensic evidence, the fingerprint on the knife. Experts explained how unlikely it was for that print to remain in such a pristine state from casual kitchen use. The defense struggled to counter it. Derek's legal team argued that the evidence was circumstantial and lacked a clear motive strong enough for murder. They pointed to the absence of any violent history and painted Derek as a flawed man who had made mistakes but not a killer. They said the life insurance policy wasn't unusual and claimed that Derek had deleted his messages out of fear they would be misinterpreted. But the jury didn't buy it. The pieces fit too well, and the lies had been too elaborate. After a brief deliberation, the verdict came: guilty of first-degree murder. Derek Collins was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the courtroom, Sarah's parents held each other tightly as the judge read the sentence. They had lost their daughter in the most unimaginable way, at the hands of someone she loved and trusted. In the months that followed, Maplewood tried to return to normal. The house where the murder took place remained empty, a haunting reminder of what had happened. The local school planted a tree in Sarah's memory, and her students made a small plaque to place beneath it. Her parents started a foundation in her name to support domestic violence prevention and awareness, a cause they never imagined would become so personal. Derek's downfall served as a grim warning that appearances can be deceiving, and even the most charming facade can hide dangerous secrets. What began as a fairy tale ended in betrayal and tragedy, leaving behind only unanswered questions, broken trust, and the memory of a life stolen far too soon.